Welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name's Clint Button and I'm a grant sculptor. Welcome to video number 163 of the Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. All right, I've done just a little bit more with her. I think she's what she's gonna be. And so I'm gonna start working on the mold. Now, I told you, you do these molds and it's what you're comfortable with and what you do all the time and what you do once in a while and they go the way they go. Well, I'm gonna try doing a mold that'll separate with, at least a front, and probably take the back and split the back into two pieces and see if that will work. And so right now I'm trying to determine my parting line on the front. Because I'll have to put rubber on this, put silicone on. I'm only got a couple tubes left. I'm gonna go buy fresh silicone. You can keep it inside, the GE Silicone one, I always forget which one or two, but the clear. Other people, you can use other silicones. I'm not saying they won't work. I'm a creature of habit, okay? I'm not superstitious and say, well, this works and this doesn't, in general, when it's a vague thing. I'm stuck in my ways because I don't want to have to do this 2 or 3 times. I don't want to spend $50 or $80 or $100 on silicone and have it fail, because that's money out of my pocket, man. And so in order to make it work, I use what I always use. And, maybe I could, excuse me, maybe I could try different things and they'll work. And you always think, yeah, I'll give that a shot when I do something that isn't that important. Well, at this point in my studio, I don't really do a lot of stuff that isn't important, because if it's important enough to warrant me spending money on it, I want it right. So, I'm going to work on putting, I did a little bit more on the back of her head because she had a little issue where she didn't have enough brains, and worked with the back of her neck to try to balance this out, because I am going to cut some off here in the plaster. But I think she's probably, if I can carve her in stone that good, I think we'll be plenty good enough. I'll try to do the front in one peel. I'm going to put I'm going to put blue tape, masking tape, down here on the plinth, just because that's the easy way to do it. These are just set on. I could pull these off if I wanted to, but the problem is that this could collapse. We're getting into warmer weather, which is one reason I want to hurry up and get this cast, because I don't want this to start coming off, because it will fail. I've got to make sure that anywhere the wood is showing for this armature, that it's covered up, just to keep the silicone from grabbing and holding on right there, because it will. And so, but I got a little hump on her neck right there that will clean off, and that will change her neck a lot. It'll change the way her posture looks a lot, and it'll relax her a lot to not have this volume forward. So, I know they show you can flash it with if we were doing a waste mold, we'd just take a bunch of little pieces of aluminum flashing, or even tin, roofing stuff, and just stick them in here and make a dam all the way around, throw the plaster on, and then wreck her, take it apart by destroying the clay, so we preserve the mold. Usually the mold, you'll reinforce it with a bunch of whatever. I mean, Angelo had a big bucket full of metal scraps, little angle iron, kind of like erector set stuff, and all kinds of little pieces that he thought would work. And then you would bury them in the plaster so that the actual mold doesn't break. But that's for a waste mold, one shot. We're gonna do a silicone mold. Now you can put a thing around here and build it up real pretty, and take your little divot tool and make perfect pockets so there's perfect holes, and yeah, okay, I'll get there. We got to get this started, get this initial layer on, and then build it up, and then match other silicone to it, and have something between them so that the silicone doesn't grab when we do that, because it will. And so we just have to choose our high line on here. And this first coat's not a real big deal. We'll put a coat on and make it really thin. I went to the Goodwill store and bought a spandex yogurt pants kind of fabric, whatever, t-shirt, and it's plenty big enough to cover her up. You know, it's cost $1. And so we're going to bury that after I put the initial layer on. Then I'll let that cure, and then I'll come back and I'll have to start being concerned with filling undercuts with foam and making sure that the foam is all good. And then at the same time, putting everything together so that the mold is secure, because I'm going to try to, I've got a mold that I like, I'm going to study, not one that I did, one that was done for a bronze that I did, and they use different rubber, but they, you know, the hydrocal and the chop that's in it to support it is all married right to the rubber, and they don't separate, so you get a little better final result, because anytime you pull the mother off of the silicone, it doesn't always lay back in there just as perfect. And this one I want it to be really, I want to try to do it as well as I can. So I'm going to try to do a little bit better mold. So I'm going to work on putting a dam around here the whole way to get this started, and then try to start silicone on here before the end of the day. I got to run to the special store, and you know, where you buy 2x4s and stuff, and buy a fresh box of silicone. I don't know that I'll need a whole box, but it's not worth buying 5 tubes and then you end up needing 7. And so, and I'll risk using old silicone, like it's been in the office or whatever. If you buy silicone, leave it out and it freezes, it's junk. Okay, if you put it in your building and your building can go below 0 or water freezes, it's junk. It'll never cure right. And so I like I said, I've had molds where they failed and I had to peel all the old goopy, nasty silicone off. I'm gonna put perfect silicone I know is good on first. And then after that, if I want to try with some other stuff, you know, I may give it a try, but I try to not have a lot that sits around for an extended period of time, so that when I run out, I just wait, and then I go to the store and I buy brand new silicone so it's nice and fresh. And so I'm going to work on putting this together, and we'll be back in a bit. Okay, another day, another dollar that I got to spend or whatever. Went and got silicone. It's gone up in price, of course, like everything else, and the local box store now charges more. You have to buy more to get a discount, so, you know, I didn't really feel like spending, you know, $280 to get a deal, to save 20 bucks, because I don't know that I need that. A case is $140 now. Now, it's feasible to do this, and you'll look at all the old books and they do their molds and they make a, you know, different 1 or 2 or 3 piece molds. And they don't usually, a lot of those don't have silicone in them. They'll break them up to where you can pull them apart, you know, and it's just plaster. I'm not that smart, man. I mean, I know people that do this all the time. They're usually not the people that are carving them in stone. They just do plasters, so we'll see parting lines and how to break and everything. I'm going to put rubber on it. I'm going to put silicone on. I'm going to fill undercuts with my foam that, of course, I put away so well now I can't find it, so I got to go look for it. Got everything else, just not the foam. And I could do a big dam with clay with this plastilina all the way around, and I'm just going to start this to do one portion of it, and then we'll have to do the others. This is going to take, you know, a few days, and I'll work on other stuff around it. I Did a little bit more on her. I think I've got her pretty well balanced. It's nice how this will isolate her in a certain manner so that I can see her even better. But we'll, I'll start building this, and the problem is that the silicone is really bad about adhering to each other when I pull this away to do subsequent areas, because I'll have to do a split. I'll do a split down the back here, and I'm probably going to do one piece underneath here about to the middle, and then another piece. So it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections. And when this backs up to each other, it becomes a problem because you can't, I don't know where I put my safe. It becomes a problem because you can't get the silicone apart. It'll grab each other. Even if you use the expensive silicone, it will knit to other silicone. You can pour over it and it grabs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line this. Because we've got a relatively complex mold, we're not doing one that has a straight parting line around it. It's not as critical to go through and take your tool and cut a cup like half a ball to where they register to go together. It doesn't hurt, but it isn't really necessary. And what we're going to do, we'll put this together and we'll build this side, and then we'll have to build the other sides, is I'm going to take paper and I'm going to line all of this parting line with paper that cuts and fits right up to her or even goes in just a little bit. And then when I put the silicone on, the silicone will adhere to this, okay? Before I put the next layer of silicone on, because once I have this built up and have this pretty well established, that can be my dam for this portion and this portion. I'll only have to put one down here, and I can do this whole portion, and then I'll have this left, and I'll be able to do this last portion, whatever order I go in. But I'm going to put this, I'm going to line it, and the silicone will stick to this, okay? You understand that. Then, before I proceed, I'm going to take and cut another section of paper. I'm going to put Vaseline on this and make this into an oil paper. And I'll paint the opposite, once we pull this off, I'll paint this opposite face with the Vaseline and put another piece of paper on there for the rubber to stick to. And I'll make this probably a little bit taller as we go. I wanted to get some support on it because we're going to get into heat and it's going to collapse and fall off. And so I'll work on building this up and getting it to be pretty good, to where there's enough of a flange that I can put some clamps or maybe even a couple of bolts to it. Now nuts and bolts cost a fortune. And you could put this on and it'd be real easy to spend, $50 to $100 just on nuts, bolts, and washers. Even if you buy just a box of 50 or whatever, and you buy 50 of each, you got 50 bolts, cap screws, 50 washers, and 50 nuts, and if you got a washer on each side, you got 100 washers. So, you've got 200 pieces there, and it's pretty likely they're going to end up costing you, about $1.50 per assembly by the time you buy all that stuff. So you can reuse them, but then you got your mold apart and put away, and if you want to ever use it again, you got to find them. So you end up putting them in that. We already got $140 in silicone. We're going to have money in plaster. This will be an expensive piece to cast. So, but I'm going to work on lining this. I got to find my scissors that I put down, and I can't find them. And we'll be back in a little bit. When I do this, you can fold your paper like I fold it in quarters, just because that's plenty flange right there. I didn't fold the first one. I usually just cut it approximately in quarters, but I know most people are going to want some kind of metric, so. That gives you a pretty easy way to do it. I do tuck this in like when you put flashing in. As I'm working, and you'll save your little specks, your little scraps as you trim it, and you can use that to plug some of the holes, some of the gaps that you'll have. But as you do this, if you tuck this in too much, you'll end up with and I just put a little bit of Vaseline on this just to kind of stick it together. I don't want the paper to be really oily because I want the silicone to grab to it. I want this to be some permanent layer. And if you want to release it beforehand, if you're using naphtha soap or Joy or whatever, dish detergent, you can do that. You know, I didn't. And I try to overlap it pretty good so I know you may end up with some paper that protrudes past the plastic rubber. When you peel this off, you may have to go back and trim it. It's not really significant. You got to remember, this is not, and I'll repeat it, it is not a foundry level model. If you're doing a model for the foundry, it has to be perfect. Okay, this doesn't have to be perfect because we're still gonna carve this. And I talked about that with one of y'all that's called and email and all that stuff. And this isn't a matter of rigid compliance. You don't have to absolutely duplicate this into stone, unless it's a perfect portrait model, okay? This is like an outline, just like the other plaster is an outline. The purpose, it's supposed to guide you. This is supposed to guide me to doing a good job. Now her face, her exact face, tried to get it pretty decent. That's going to be more of a precise reproduction. The rest of her hand needs to be where it is. But then when we get to doing her fabric and her hair, and stuff like that, it's going to be close to this, but I don't have to be absolute. I can kind of have a little bit of freedom with it. And so just remember what you're doing, what you're getting paid to do and what you're not getting paid to do. And then just keep working on it. All right, through the magic of video, she's pretty well together. Put just a little bit up on here just to make them stick together. I don't want to put a lot, you know, the Vaseline isn't ideal. And that's just cosmetic. That just makes it look all fancy because it's even. You don't have to do that. I went around and I tucked everything pretty well and pretty happy with the way it looks. Now I could just put the Vaseline on my clay, but I don't want to change it because I know how hard it is and I don't want it to be any softer. And when it gets, like, it's supposed to be about 90 today. And this stuff gets so soft and sticky when it's 90 that I don't like using it. It's not any fun. You can't wrap it up. I'm used to a different durometer if you want to get specific. I'm used to it being a little bit harder to work with. And so, but I think she's pretty well good. I've tried to go through and make sure, do it right there, that I don't have any big keys. What'll happen when you put your silicone on, and I mentioned this, you know, videos ago when I was casting other models way back in the beginning for people that were paying attention. If you have voids underneath something and you try to work the silicone in, buddy, it'll find them. And what'll end up happening is when you take it apart, it'll lock and it'll pull apart and it'll damage stuff. The danger comes when you don't recognize that something keyed like that and caused a problem, because you'll cast it in plaster, especially in plaster that's not strong like hydrocal or dental stone. You'll cast it, and when you pull it apart, it'll just pop right off, and you'll lose something like, a real easy one is her nostrils. You can have just a little bit of a key up there, and you'll pull it off, and you'll blow one side of her nose right off of a otherwise perfect cast. That ain't a happy feeling, man. So you'll lose details like her knuckles, you know, I mean the ends of her fingers, you know, like you saw me just fixing under her thumb. Those are really serious issues, and you'll do this and you'll sort of get lulled into, I talk about the siren song, you'll get lulled into doing this and think, oh, she's so great, done such a good job, I thought of everything. No, you didn't, dummy. Slow down, figure it out, because if you don't, they will teach you, you will be taught. And because none of this cares. There's no emotion or judgment in any of this. All this is going to do is just show you what you did right and what you did wrong. And if you do things like have a big key around her eye here, you know, like in the corner of her eye, or you know, somewhere else between her lips, you'll have a little bit of a gap, and you'll pull that out and it won't release, and all of a sudden you've got a major failure, you know. So go over and proof it really well, because things like back in here, it can lock really hard, and we're going to put a thin layer, and then I'm going to go over it really diligently with foam and make sure that everything's where it needs to be. But you want to eliminate whatever you have to do, because it can go bad really, really quickly, and you'll really, really be disappointed. So I'm going to get a little bit of water and mix up some naphtha and release this. Try to stay off the paper as much as I can, so I'll be back in a minute. In psychology class, when you're going to college, it's called state-dependent learning. And there's things that have to do with recall and all that. And when I start doing this, and I start shaving some naphtha soap. Angelo's here. He's saying, he says, you do this and you do that, and this works really well for me, and you might not, but I know it works for me. And he was very careful not to tell me I was doing it wrong, but he could tell me what worked right for him. And he was a big supporter all the way literally till he died. And I miss him a lot. He's not the only master that's gone, and different people that are no longer available, and I can't just make a phone call, write him a letter, and talk to him anymore. It's a big deal. But I want to make this fairly thick. So I can paint along the edge and not get my paper all wet. And it isn't necessarily critical on the clay, because the silicone doesn't particularly stick to the clay, but it does some, and it just isn't worth fighting it. I mean, I want a nice mold. And this gives me exactly that. And I mix this up nice and thick so it's foamy with my indoor plumbing. Works great. And so I'm probably not going to be able, I'll start the next video of doing the silicone, because I've only got just a few minutes left here on this video, and I don't want it to turn into a 40-minute video. I don't like doing those. I think they're too long. 30-ish minutes is pushing it, because I know y'all have things to do, and you've got real jobs and stuff like that, and time might be different for you than it is for me. But I'll go through and I'll get this on, and then I'd like to get the silicone right on here, this first, and run it up as far as I can on the paper, just as a thin coat, just to get it started. And then it should help support the paper so it doesn't just fall off, because it's a drag to do all this and have all your plans. And even if you've got a closed up studio, you come back and 2 or 3 pieces fell off on the floor and they got dirty, and now they won't stick well, and they're whatever. So and if we can get this on now, then I can go run some errands while it's drying. And I don't know that I'll get 2 coats on it today, but I'll try. I'm only going to release where I'm working. I'm not going to release the rest of it yet, because I want to be able to work on that clay. And the only other thing to bring up on this, one of the things that's really, to me, significant about doing this is that this is going to flip how I see this shape, because just the act of putting the white surround on it really isolated her face from all of this background that's arguably the same color palette. It's the same grays and browns and whatever, and it all kind of blurs in, and it's hard to see what you're looking at. And so by doing her in clay, and this is the big thing, by doing her in clay and then doing her in plaster, I'm really going to understand what she looks like before I cut her in stone, which is a completely different color. Different values, different everything. And it handles light differently. This plastilina is a bugger. If you get it out in the light, it looks really weird because it's got a glossy glow, because if it's warm at all, it brings out more, it brings out some of the oils or wax or petroleum, whatever it is in this stone that makes it kind of oily, because it uses microcrystalline wax. And that changes how you see it, because she's not ever going to be glossy on stone and granite except when it's wet. And when it's wet, you're going to see every chisel line, almost like you got lines on her now where the brush is. And so it really helps you understand. You can pull your paintbrush for your soap over her contours, and you can see how she looks pretty and how she looks wonky. And so if you plan on having your tool marks, just like for her forehead, if we put lines straight across her forehead, she's going to look old. She's going to look wrinkly. If we've got tool marks that are parallel or phased with her eyebrows, it's going to heighten that awareness. And that isn't something you do with marble. That's only with stone. That's only when you axe a stone with tools. And so this is what I say about using, some of the fancy ornamental stones that don't close up well, is that you can't mute that impact. But by doing, round on her chin, having her nose straight, having the flow like this across her cheeks, you will understand how the tool marks need to go when you cut it, so it looks good. Because you can see on here that this makes her look all bright, happy, and pretty. And if I went straight across or up and down, she'd look either very fake or she'd be all angry and a whole different demeanor. And that's the kind of small detail that's really different with granite versus other stones. So, but this is ready to go. I just got to go find my favorite caulking gun and open some silicone and make it into a rubber mold. So, and this is probably 30 minutes-ish, 32, I think. All right, my name's Clint Button. I'm a granite sculptor here at Carolina Sculpture Studio with the Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. Thanks for coming in.